Hey, everybody. I don't always get a standing ovation when I start a talk, so it's very energizing. Thank you. There's a big picture of my face. So today I'm going to talk about building brand and building community and how those two things can be combined. And I'm going to go over 5 lessons from General Assembly and Daybreaker, from building those businesses and building those communities. And the reason I kind of came up with this talk is, I was thinking sometimes it's hard to quantify or measure the value of community on a new business or a startup or a company. And I think brand is also one of those somewhat ethereal things. It's hard to get right, but when you get it right and you do it well, it's extremely powerful. The strongest brands hit people right here, not just up here. And so I think, there's some good learnings that I've had over the years of building General Assembly and building Daybreaker about how brand and community are really done best, kind of two sides of the same coin. So we're going to talk about all that. A little bit about me. Graduated from Yale, studied sociology as my undergraduate degree. Super useful. Kidding. However, as you guys probably appreciate, building community and building businesses, my whole kind of working life since 2009 when I graduated has kind of been, a series of sociological experiments. So it's definitely a good intellectual foundation. Graduated from Yale, moved to New York. I had started a previous startup in the social gaming space while I was in college. It was called Go Cross Campus. And we were taking offline, real-world social motivations like sports rivalries and college rivalries and building online games and allowing people to kind of play out those rivalries against each other in large, kind of massive communities. We never really figured out how to generate any revenue from that business, which apparently is important for running a company, generating revenue, making money, minor details, right? That thing failed. We hadn't raised some money, built a team, the recession hit, couldn't raise any more, had to shut it down, made a lot of first-time founder mistakes. Inevitably, though, I still had that entrepreneurial bug. I wanted to start something new, but I never really had a real job. And I knew when I moved to New York, all right, I don't want to just join a company, I want to start something. 2009 is sort of some of the ideas around General Assembly started to happen. We founded General Assembly in 2010. And now, fast forward several years, we've raised about $50 million in funding. We just hit 500 employees. I know that because our HR team recently mentioned that we ran out of licenses for some HR SaaS software that we were using, so we had to upgrade to the more expensive version. And we have campuses in 14 cities around the globe. And we're really building a new kind of educational institution, focused on helping people transform their lives for the better, giving them skills, immersing them in a really supportive community, and helping to connect them up with opportunities and jobs and kind of the next stage in their career. And then more recently, just in late 2013, started Daybreaker. And Daybreaker, we're now in 8 cities around the world and counting. We have tens of thousands of participants. General Assembly really began as a kind of a social experiment in community building. We thought, let's create a physical hub to bring people together in New York City. Daybreaker was also very much an art project / social experiment. Essentially, we threw a party. Because we're sort of getting tired of a lot of things that were going, and we decided we wanted to create something new. So both of these are really experiments that just happened to work, which I'll talk about later, but keep that in mind. So New York 2009, what's going on, right? The recession had just hit. Tech was transforming every single industry out there, whether it was retail or legal or real estate or media or advertising or journalism or finance, right? Technology is trying to transform industries and change the way that people were working, change the skills that you needed to be relevant for the new economy. And yet a lot of corporate jobs, due to the recession, were less secure and less available. And so what you were seeing was a lot of people starting to question, their career paths. What they thought was, all right, here's a safe and steady industry or a safe and steady career path. The economy had kind of been turned upside down in a number of ways, and a lot of people realizing, what am I going to do? What's the safe route? What's my next move? A lot of those questions were coming up. At the same time, the New York tech scene was really starting to come alive. It was this burgeoning, growing thing, but it still felt somewhat disjointed and ad hoc. You're going to hear from Scott, who started Meetup, I think 2 talks after me, so he can tell me more about that. But, I was going to a lot of meetups. I was getting involved in the startup community in New York. There was a meetup here, an event there, that sort of thing. But we thought, what if we could we realized, okay, people are looking for new career paths. People are looking for new skills, new inspiration. They're looking to be a part of a community. They're looking to have answers. They're looking to feel that they belong in this kind of tumultuous time in New York City's history. And we thought, all right, well, maybe we can do something here. So, I had the idea, along with a couple of friends, to create something called General Assembly. This is a picture of a part of our campus. So we thought, let's create a community nucleus, right? That can be kind of the epicenter of the startup ecosystem in New York City. And we thought, right, this needs to be a physical place. We're not talking about building an online community. We're talking about building an actual physical place to bring people together offline, build community face-to-face. And we thought, all right, this place needs to be a place of social interaction. People need to vibe. They need to connect. They need to talk to each other. It needs to be a place of professional collaboration. So we'll have co-working. We'll have a whole bunch of startups who are there. And they can collaborate and show each other's, show products and designs and, make introductions for each other and have it be kind of a professional family. And also we thought, all right, this should be a place for shared learning. It should be a place where people can share their skills, they can teach, they can learn. It really needs to be an intellectual and educational hub as well. So that was kind of vision 1.0 of what we wanted to create here. Fast forward a couple years, New York 2013. I'm still full-time at General Assembly, by the way, have been, ever since our inception 4 or 5 years ago, as we continue to build. But, being kind of an inherent entrepreneur, community builder, I'm sure you guys can appreciate, you always have that itch for building more community. You're never done, right? You never feel like, all right, I'm good. I built all the communities I need, right? You always want to be doing more. And so, New York 2013, I've always loved music and live entertainment and the power of creating really meaningful offline experiences for people, bringing people together, and kind of taking them to some transcendent place, I've been to, Burning Man several times, and, there's a lot of inspiration out there in the world. But at the same time, I was kind of frustrated with a lot of traditional nightlife in New York. I felt that dance culture and kind of going out were inevitably linked, with synthetics, with some darker elements, escapism, exclusiveness, people being mean, pushy, drugs, alcohol, powering, people. And with that, there's got to be something more than that. That feels like if that's the only place that you can go out and dance and celebrate and feel like you're part of some greater tribal human experience, then something is missing. At the same time, thinking about mornings, I'm not a morning person, but I thought, well, what if we could create something that was so good? What would be the most fantastic way to start your day? That would be so good that it would get even non-morning people up early to start off their day in a really positive way. What would all that look like? What would be the kind of amalgamation of some of these ideas? And the answer was ended up being Daybreaker. So I want to talk about that a little bit. We thought with Daybreaker, all right, the idea here is let's create a really exhilarating, positive, kind of values-driven or mission-driven morning dance party experience. That would be a way that you could start off your day unlike any other experience people have had in their day. And that was like our first, I remember looking at my notebook just a week or two ago, and I wrote down some of these ideas back in 2013. And so that was kind of the original concept, and we thought, all right, let's try this as an experiment. Let's actually do this once, see what happens. And we did it once back in December of 2013. It was snowing. We handpicked 300 friends, invited them, sold tickets. People showed up. It was amazing. We thought, all right, worst case, nobody shows up and woke up too early one day, right? And it was kind of a failure. But again, it's an experiment, so who cares? Best case, it becomes something much bigger. And so I want to talk about 5 learnings. I want to kind of give you a little bit of context and background on both of these projects, both of these communities. But over the years, these are 5 kind of key learnings, key lessons that have really resonated with me for both General Assembly and Daybreaker. So I'm going to talk about each one, but when you think about building community, you think about online and offline, and you think about how brand and community can really support each other, and how you can sort of have the business case of building a strong brand with the kind of social and more human case of building a strong community. Here's, I think, 5 areas that of how those two things fit together. So let's dive in. Number 1, activate the core. So focus your early efforts on really building a core, powerful sort of set of early believers, right? Some people call these early adopters. I think early adopters are the people, but it all comes down to really activating them. With General Assembly, we literally handpicked out 300 people who we thought, all right, these are going to be the people who, if enough of them really love what we're doing, that they will be the core. They'll be the evangelists. They will kind of spread the message. With General Assembly, as David was saying, I mean, I was literally bringing hundreds and hundreds of people, entrepreneurs, designers, developers, professors, people in the startup ecosystem, startup community, into this big, raw, empty General Assembly space with no walls and no lights or anything, but kind of selling the dream and saying, imagine here's the library over here, and how would you arrange the desks? How do you think you should have walls? Do you think, how big should the classroom be? And just getting people's input. I would organize group dinners where I'd bring some people who were kind of on the fence about General Assembly, like, I don't know if this is, really, I don't know if they believe in it, they don't know if they believe in it, or they don't know if, how powerful it can be, along with people who were just like, just true believers, and we kind of mingled them together, and you let the true believers kind of brainwash the people who are kind of on the fence, and by the end of the night, everybody is excited. We did space tours. We also manually built the first 1,000 people in our General Assembly email list. And by that I mean every single person that we emailed, that I emailed about GA in the early days when it was still in a concept or still in build-out, every single person whose business card that I got from having a conversation about General Assembly, I would physically take their email address, throw them into a document, and it just kept going, just building up until we got to probably close to 1,000 people. And when we sent out our first newsletter, first kind of email saying, hey, this is General Assembly, we already had 1,000 people on there who I had physically or digitally interacted with about what we were doing. So, it takes some time, but being manual up front with creating that core is huge. Number 2, give karma and get karma. This is a picture of Daybreaker we did about a month ago. At the Highline Ballroom. This is the yoga that we do in the hour before the dance party begins. This is something I cannot stress enough. Give. Be as useful as possible. Connect people, inspire them, support. It's all about them. It's not really about you. Anything that you can do to give to the people in your life, the people in your extended network or ecosystem, all of that kind of comes back toward you. I remember early on when I first moved to New York and was first building GA, I didn't really have a lot of experience, didn't really know too many people. So how was I going to add value? How was I going to give and create, karma? Well, what I did was as I would meet people, as I would go to events, go to meetups, go to dinners or whatever, have coffees, I would meet people and get to know them, get to see what they were working on, see what their needs were. And as I met more people, I would find, oh, you know what? This person's building some e-commerce retail startup. Here's an investor who's looking for cool retail opportunities to put their money in. Have they met? No. If not, I'll make that introduction and connect them up. And if that's a good introduction and both of them are better off, if both of them find value, then both of them are better off. The greater ecosystem kind of gets a 2 + 1s, right? And I look good for having connected those two people. So it's not a zero-sum game, right? The more introductions and the more kind of positive karma that you can give out into your network, you only stand to gain from it. And all of that stuff inevitably comes back to you. For years, I was just trying to do as much as I could to support the greater ecosystem in New York, support the startup community. And then, for example, when we needed instructors for General Assembly or we were looking to make hires, I would kind of put those questions out there into the universe, either by talking to people or put them on Facebook or an email or whatever. And people, knew that I had been supportive and maybe I'd made an introduction for them or invited them to an event or something, and they were that much happier to support, kind of give back to me when there was something that I needed. So, the thing that I would recommend is try to think, try to every day, try to make 2 to 3 intros if you can, every day as a habit. And if you get into a habit like that of just connecting people on a regular basis, not asking for anything in return, inevitably that stuff is going to come back to support you. That karma is going to come back. So number 3, establish clear brand values. And here's where I think, we start to get into this idea of how brand and community can connect. This picture is a shot of our campus in New York City on our 2nd floor, I believe. So one of the things that we did early on with both General Assembly and Daybreaker was we really codified founding principles. We said, all right, before we build anything, before we build a product, before we build a community, before we even build the brand, what are those founding principles of the brand that are going to ultimately shape that greater community ethos and ultimately shape the business, right? So 2 examples there. At General Assembly, we try to create a culture of reciprocity. And our next slide, I'll kind of outline the actual values that we defined. We try to create a culture of reciprocity, which is one of our kind of core elements of the brand, by having big bulletin boards that said, you put up there and you said, I'm offering X, I'm a developer and I'm offering free tutoring for people to learn how to code, maybe. Or, you know what, I need to hire a designer part-time because I'm building a new app. And it was a physical thing. We put up these little, you could put up little pieces of paper on this bulletin board, and people could connect and email each other, and it was just a great way to encourage people to support each other, as opposed to just General Assembly supporting them or vice versa. And then with Daybreaker, we try to create a culture of positivity and warmth through the music selection, through the check-in process and how we interact, what we say to people, some of the closing remarks at every event. So it's a lot of you sort of take these core values, which are really abstract and high level, and ultimately it all comes down to how you put them into practice, right? How you turn those brand values into practice. And so when we thought about establishing those norms, those values as founding principles, we thought, all right, these values are going to be what drives the brand and also ultimately what drives the community. And these need to be one and the same. It's not like we have brand values over here and then we have the community and we need to have the community doing something else. It's the community needs to live and breathe these things just as we're living and breathing them as we build this brand. And so with General Assembly, we came up with kind of 3 core brand values: people before the machine, learning by doing, and journey over destination. And over the years, those have kind of been our North Star, right? That's kind of been our Polaris, if you will, as to how we've built the company, built the brand, built the community. With Daybreaker, before we launched our first event, we said, all right, Daybreaker's going to be about 5 things. It's going to be about camaraderie and community. It's going to be about health and wellness. It's going to be about self-expression, being creative. It's going to be about immediacy, being present, being mindful. And then last, it's going to be about a little bit of mischief. And so everything we do, whether it's how we write our email copy, whether it's what we say on stage, at the end of a Daybreaker event, whether it's how we encourage people to interact with each other, any of these things, all of this kind of is oriented toward these brand values. And because the brand values and the community values are the same, it means that when we build community, everything we do to build community ultimately supports the brand, as long as those kind of founding principles are very clear, very known to everybody in the company, and that they're aligned. So number 4, create meaningful offline experiences. This, I think is obvious. We're here at an event. We're coming together. We're not just live streaming or talking online on a message board or Facebook or something. We're here in person. Think about offline UX design. I think oftentimes people talk about UX, right, user experience design, and it's all about what happens on a little glowing screen. But when I think about UX design, I think there's this whole other world about offline. Right? How do you create an experience that is magical, that's memorable, that engages people in real life? Think about what touch points, what moments of serendipity can you create? What sorts of interactions can you create for people that will leave them with a really memorable experience? So a couple of examples. Take people to the edge of their comfort zone. People oftentimes in their lives kind of avoid being uncomfortable, right? You do things that are habitual, you do things that are comfortable. So if you take people to the edge of their comfort zone, such as, again, 7 a.m. sober dance party, something like that, it's more memorable, and you can kind of get people out of their usual headspace and maybe change their perspective, change their opinion on something. Number 2, surprise and delight. Think about the unexpected. Try to create things that people wouldn't normally expect. Whether it's, at Daybreaker we have, at the end of a dance party, everyone would sit down, and oftentimes we'll have like a spoken word poet come on or something, which you'd never get at a nightclub, and it's not typical at all. So try to create things that are unexpected and surprising. And then, last, at General Assembly, we would do really intimate fireside chats. I think, intimate experiences, especially in New York City, are hard to find. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of commotion, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot going on. And so being able to bring people together in a really kind of safe, grounded, intimate experience, especially people they don't know, is a great way to allow people to kind of open up, maybe share some feelings, maybe share some ideas, feel that they're surrounded by like-minded peers, so that they're not kind of running around and they don't just need to have this professional face on. They kind of take that off and go back to being humans, which is a nice thing to create for people. In general, I find that people connect far more deeply offline than online. If you're just messaging, you're just texting, if you're operating through some kind of digital intermediary, you can only get so much communication. You only have so much interaction between people. So when you can bring people together offline, even for just a few hours, it's a really powerful thing, and you allow people to connect far more deeply. The last I'll say on this is Net Promoter Score, if you guys have heard of that. This is something which we use at General Assembly kind of as our North Star, as a way to measure, okay, is what we're doing working? So when we think about how do you measure the impact of community, how do you measure the impact of an experience, Net Promoter Score is basically a metric that what you do is you ask everyone in some survey or some questionnaire, you say, okay, how likely are you to recommend this experience or this product or this service to friends or colleagues? 10 being absolutely 100%, I'd recommend it. 0 being nope, I would actually tell people not to use it. And so what you do is you aggregate all those responses and you take all the 9s and 10s and you subtract out the number of 0s to 6s, essentially, which means you have your promoters and you remove, you minus out all of your detractors, and you divide that delta by the total number of responses, and you basically get a percentage. And the higher that percentage is, the more that you know that what you're doing is working. And then last, balance curation with openness. This is tricky. It's something that I think it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's been tricky for me too, as we've grown General Assembly, grown Daybreaker, and it always comes down to like finding some happy medium of the two. So when you think about community, right, the more tightly you curate it, right, the more selective you are, the more exclusive you are, the more you're curating and managing the people, right, that's going to lead to a higher quality membership, higher quality, network of individuals, right? However, that can be kind of, for the people who did not get curated, who did not get selected, or not on the inside, it can be seen as too clubby or unwelcoming or kind of exclusive, right, which can be damaging to your brand and damaging to your community from the people's perspectives on the outside. At the same time, if it's totally open and it's just pay to play, if anyone can sign up, anyone can join, anyone can come in, you run the risk of, if you're not curating at all, you run the risk of the total quality of your community kind of shallowing out, right? The people who are the most valuable members of the community want to hang out, want to interact with other high-value members of the community, and if they look around, it's like, oh, well, this is a bunch of losers, then it's going to be less enticing to them, and they might leave. So how do you kind of balance those two? Because you want to be welcoming, you want to be open, but you also want to focus on quality and curation. So it's something to think about. How we did it, figured out at General Assembly, was realize, all right, let's have workshops and events. All of our classes will open up to the public so that anyone who's interested can come to General Assembly, take a workshop, learn a skill, take a class. Awesome. However, membership, we started with a co-working membership. We don't do that anymore. But when we're doing membership, and today when we do courses, those are selective. So you actually have to apply and get accepted to take a course or to become a member at General Assembly. And so we thought, all right, we'll have the two of these together. The classes and workshops will be open. Those are very welcoming. But you still get the tight curation and that higher value community when it comes to courses and membership. At Daybreaker, we started by being invite only. So as we sort of invited 300 friends. Our first maybe 5 or 6 events, the events were actually password protected because we really wanted to keep it tight. Really wanted to keep the community tight and kind of insider focused, right? To make sure that it didn't kind of blow up or we didn't damage the ethos of the community too soon. We actually avoided all PR for months until we kind of finally felt, all right, the community here, that core is strong enough. The people here are the vibe is there, and we know if we start to bring more people from the outside in, that kind of by osmosis they'll soak it up and they'll join in this experience. But by opening it up, we thought, all right, finally once it's strong enough, once it's big enough, the outside influence and outside voices and ideas won't poison the well, but instead will kind of add to the greater wave. So, final thing, what's next, right? What's the future? Where are we headed? Where are we going with General Assembly and Daybreaker? I think both of these companies are really about creating community at their core. Literally in our mission statement in General Assembly, it's about creating a global community of people empowered to pursue work they love, and it's about transforming people's lives for the better. Daybreaker, it's also about transforming people's day, empowering them, energizing them, helping them become better versions of themselves. But both of those are done. All that's done. Those building communities is all done by focusing on building really strong brands at the core. So when I think about General Assembly and Daybreaker, I think okay, there's the brand at the very center. There's a tight community of people kind of around that, all interacting with each other, interacting with the brand. And then we have, kind of spokes out of there. We have different, revenue streams and business models. So, both organizations are really about helping people transform their lives, helping them connect with like-minded peers, and ultimately pursue what it is inside them that, they should be pursuing, their inner calling, if you will. And so, when I think about it, without a strong brand, right, with both GA and Daybreaker, without a strong brand at the core, the communities wouldn't be as loyal. The communities wouldn't really know what's this all about, what are those values, what is this called, what am I a part of, what do I identify with, what do I belong to? And so you need that strong brand to kind of drive the community. But at the same time, without a strong community, the brand would be soulless. I mean, I won't name any names, but there's a lot of brands out there where they might be big and global and well-known, but do they have a strong community following? Do they have that love, right? Do people love the brand and feel intimately connected, and do they identify with the brand? I think the best way to identify with the brand is to identify with a community of people around the brand. So General Assembly and Daybreaker expanding over the world. This is a map of some of our GA campuses. We want to continue to take both of these projects to more people around the globe. And that's all I got. Thank you. Hope we have an event tomorrow morning, Daybreaker. But thanks for having me.